Disney has adapted Roald Dahl's book of the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, and it looks to be like a metaphor for pedophilia and just all the dark stuff I talk about in previous videos, my videos about what if Walt Disney was a pedophile, satanic pedophile. And this is how they use characters that look like kid-friendly characters to push out a deviant sexual agenda. This happens throughout many Disney movies as well as children's books. And it's exposing children to narratives and hidden subliminal messaging that they're not ready to handle. Now, I didn't read the book Big Friendly Giant, but my children did. And one of my daughters points out that it was really creepy. This man, this big giant man, reaches in and plucks a girl out of her bed. And here I found the passage. Here it is in this book review, and it says, 8-year-old Sophie peers out the window of her orphanage one night and sees something terrifying. A huge dark shadow is coming down the street. A gigantic hand reaches through the window and plucks her from her bed. She squirms as the giant man holding her hurries to his cave in Giant Land. Now, this is disturbing on lots of levels. First of all, sexual abuse, the sexual abuse plague is really virulent in orphanages and foster homes. I think it's like 75% of all girls who are in foster homes get sexually abused. That's an astronomically high number. I worked in treatment centers. I've talked about this in previous videos with kids who were sexually reactive and then teenage sex offenders. And a lot of sexual abuse takes place when the children have been taken out of their home by DSS or something like that. And they're placed in foster care, and they place young children with old children. This happens all the time. And there's a lot of abuse that happens in these places. And so many of these books and these tales, Peter Pan, these types of things, a lot of things coming out of England, take place in orphanages. An orphan child, Harry Potter. And so these children are always extraordinarily vulnerable because they don't have loving parents protecting them. And I've talked about how they're destroying the family and the parents in our modern day world. And then all children will grow up without loving parents, orphaned, raised by machinery, artificial wombs, and these types of things. I cover this in other videos. So think about this creepy beginning to this book. A giant man, a shadow comes down the street, reaches into this girl's bedroom or this girl's bed and pulls her out of the bed and whisks her away to his home. And you think about all the stuff that goes along with this. That young girl, Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped and made a wife at age 12 or something like that. You think about Patty Hearst. You think about all these people who suffer from Stockholm Syndrome, where they're kidnapped and then they identify with the perpetrator, the abuser. And there's so much here just in the initial scenes. Then there's the posters for this movie. There's a really creepy poster where the girl is standing on the giant's feet and basically looking up at his crotch. So all of this stuff is not okay. Think about being a parent, or think about one of your loved ones, if you're a younger person, being taken out of their bed by a strange man and then taken back to his house or his apartment or whatever. Think about that. That's just creepy. So there's nothing nice about this. There's no storyline that makes that type of behavior okay. There's no situation where a child should be yanked out of their safety of their bedroom, again, a place where they're vulnerable, they're sleeping, these types of things, and whisked away by a stranger. That's a nightmare. This is a horror movie. Guy isn't a hero. He's a pedophile. He's a perpetrator. That's what this is about. So I discuss this quite in depth in my Disney video, my recent Disney video about him possibly being a pedophile and a Satan worshiper, a Freemason, all these types of things. I'll leave a link in the description box to that video, but that goes along with this one. And you think about a lot of the childhood tales. You think about Peter Pan, again, another orphan, and just there's all kinds of, this pansexual. I just made a video about that. There's just lots of sexual undertones in that story. Very creepy if you've seen the Peter Pan movies. And then you think about other stories like Alice in Wonderland. It's a multi-personality disorder, MK Ultra metaphor. We've talked about that in other videos as well. And so you have these creepy stories aimed at children, and they have adult themes throughout, hidden adult themes, subliminal messages. They're just creepy. The books themselves, and then the movies later on, the movies that are adapted to them. And one of the things that I found interesting about this is Roald Dahl. Now, he's made a variety, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movies, as well as James and the Giant Peach. So this is what he's famous for. And here's this. This is an article from the Telegraph, British paper. Roald Dahl, he's an Englishman. Roald Dahl's seductive work as a British spy. Roald Dahl, known as one of the world's favorite children authors, was involved in numerous sexual liaisons as a British spy in America, according to a new biography. It says a portrait of Dahl's Second World War years as an undercover agent attached to the British Embassy in Washington is painted in the Irregulars, published in Britain on September 9th. And it talks about how it drew on previously unpublished letters. And it says American journalist Janet Conant has written about Dahl's numerous sexual conquests. They included Millicent Rogers, the heiress to a Standard Oil fortune, and Claire Booth Luce, a right-wing congresswoman, and the wife of a publisher of Time magazine. Booth proved so frisky, Dahl later claimed to have begged his superiors to take him off the assignment, only to be told to get back into the bedroom. And it goes on from there, and it later says that I think he slept with everybody on the East and West Coast that was worth more than $50,000 a year. So this is back in World War II, where $50,000 a year was a small fortune. Now, I've covered this in other videos. I'm going to make maybe a specific video about this because this is something that's going on more today, even back then. Now, Julia Child was one of these types of spies, these celebrity people. And the governments, and now probably the CIA and all these different agencies, are always recruiting these people. There's famous movie producers who work as a double agent. Now, they have access because people look up to them as celebrities, and they have access to people that other people don't have. So they use celebrities who can get into embassies, and they are going to talk to world leaders, and then there could be these sexual liaisons and these types of things where they can gather information and bring it back to their respective governments. So much of Hollywood is contaminated with this type of thing, and this was going on with the British. The British taught the Americans how to do this. Now, Roald Dahl wasn't famous. He wasn't a published author, I believe, when he was a spy. So this predates this. But it shows this kind of attitude. And if you think about how they make spies be cool, spies are not cool. James Bond isn't cool. All these types of things. Mission Impossible movies, the Tom Cruise character. All these spies aren't cool. Being a spy isn't cool. And if you had access or you had contact with a spy, and somebody gained your trust and then reported it to a foreign government or your own government and sold you out, this is a Judas move, okay? This is something that's a complete low-life move. It's just like being sort of a sex offender. Think if you're a young woman or you're a woman and this guy Roald Dahl comes and wins your heart. This woman's married woman to the owner of Time magazine, and she's a congresswoman, and she gives him sensitive information, and he is romancing her, winning her heart, giving her affection. It's all a big lie. Now, when people have this, when they're romanced by somebody and the person ends up being a complete fraud and betrays them, it's very wounding. It's a form of sexual abuse. It's somebody that's pretending to love you, somebody that's pretending to, win your heart and give you what you think is a dream, romance, and these types of things. And then especially for women, this is a huge deal for them. and that they open themselves up to this creep, and then he ends up being like a total scumbag, and he's betraying them all along. This is the author of all of these famous children's books. This is a scumbag, not a good guy. Not his internal world, the internal world that allowed him to go lie and cheat and be this sort of debauched man, go about town, sleeping with all these women, many of them married, gathering information, wooing their hearts and this type of thing. That's his internal world. It's the same internal world he used to write these creepy books. Now, I read James and the Giant Peach as a kid, seen the movies, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, read those books as well. And they're kind of creepy if you think about it. The characters, they're just not great books for kids. Same thing with Harry Potter. I've talked about that in other videos. A lot of these books are really creepy. Nowadays, the modern day children's books are filled with more and more creepy stuff and adult themes. And this is the kind of guy that is writing these types of books, just like Walt Disney and these other types of people, exposing his twisted inner world to your children. And there can be no mistake about it. This is creepy. It's bad stuff. And it's not the kind of nurturing, family-oriented heroes, bravery, and these types of things that children used to listen to the campfire in generations around, in terms of the pioneer days, and in places like India and the Native American culture where storytelling was passed down, and they heard tales of glorious people, godly people, people who are saints, people with good character qualities. Now our children are polluted with this twisted garbage. You can see this movie coming, much like Maleficent, where you have a hero, a devil-like character, who is the protagonist. This giant is the protagonist. And giants were real. Now, people may or may not believe this, but there's a lot of evidence, including all kinds of different ancient cultures that talk about giants. Carnivorous, man-eating giants that were in lots of ancient texts. And we can see the remnants. You see these 7-foot people, these 8.5-foot people, 9-foot people. I mean, they've dug up bigger skeletons, and there's footprints, there's evidence for giants. Years ago, when I worked in a treatment center, there was a basement, and they got a life-size poster of Shaquille O'Neal. It was a cutout poster. It was towards the end of my shift. It was late night. I worked till 10 o'clock. And the kids were all in bed, and we were cleaning up the treatment center. I went down, I was cleaning up the basement. Maybe I was vacuuming. And I turned around. It was dark down there. And Shaquille O'Neal's life-size poster was standing behind me. I wasn't familiar. Maybe we just had got it like a week ago. And I jumped back with a start. There was like this monster behind me. There's this giant guy. And if you played basketball years ago, I'm 6'1", and I played with guys who were 6'7", 6'8", 6'11", and you can't imagine how big these guys are. And there's 8-foot people. There's these genetics within human beings. There's these giant people, and there used to be 12-foot, 15-foot, maybe even taller giant people around this planet, and they were a different species. And from all evidence, they were cannibals, or they ate human beings. And in this story, the big friendly giant, he is the one good giant telling this girl, I'm protecting you from the cannibal giants. I'm the good one. The rest of these giants are cannibals. See reference for this in many of these stories. So this is just a creepy thing. Again, something that comes from Disney and these sorts of things. It's got pedophilia, undertones, and it's really more of a horror movie. Psychological manipulation type movie, MK Ultra kind of stuff, where the child is wooed over by the villain. Seen this in Maleficent, seen this in a variety of other videos, and it's something that should be avoided.